Hello, welcome back for another video on ARK Survival Ascended. It's that time again where we check out and fully showcase 5 new creature mods that you need to try that have released in the past few months. All of these mods are free and can be played cross-platform. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Kicking things off, we have the Draco Two-Fist from Myrmecolion. This thing is probably one of the freakiest looking creatures I have ever seen in ARK, but that doesn't mean to say that it isn't cool. It is a dragon-like relative of the Seeker, which kind of makes sense after witnessing this beast in all its glory. But I am hearing you ask why? Why would you want to ruin Aberration with a flyer? Well, the Draco Two-Fist works similar to the Yeeling and the Rock Drake, and can only sustain flight for short durations. Anyway, you will find them primarily spawning in Aberration's red zone. The taming process can be quite dangerous due to being in the red zone, and with the Draco Two-Fist being highly aggressive towards any source of charged light. So having your shoulder pet turned on will turn it into a homing rocket gunning straight for you, so you do have to come well prepared. Plus, just to point out, if aggro to you, when in range it will use a stun attack, which dismounts you where you won't be able to remount your creature for a short duration of time, and this can be detrimental to your survival, especially down here in the red zone. The taming process is rather unique, where you will need a good supply of charged lanterns. You can pre-charge your lanterns with charged batteries simply by dragging a charged battery onto your lantern, and I guess it wouldn't harm to bring a bunch of spare charged batteries and some more lanterns. Place down a lantern, turn it on, and it will aggro straight to it, destroying the lantern to gain some sort of trust bar, shall we say, kinda like when taming the Carcharodontosaurus. You'll need to repeat this 3 times for the icon to turn green, where it will go into a resting stance where it is nice and chill, which lasts for roughly around a minute, where you can approach it with plant species Z fruit in your final hotbar slot to begin the passive taming process. You then just need to rinse and repeat the process of placing down charged lanterns and passively feeding it until it is tamed. While in its Netflix and chill stance, you can place down 3 lanterns quickly, turn them all on, and the Draco Two-Fist, once back to its feet, will begin destroying those one after another. Lovely jubbly. Once tamed, it does not require a saddle to ride and has its own natural armor protection. Charged light is the Draco Two-Fist's best friend. As you can see, it does have a charged light bar at the bottom of the screen, and it will need a good supply of it to fully utilize its abilities. When ridden, you can enable charge drain and can run around draining charge light from any nearby creatures that emit it. It does also have the option to drain charge directly from any shoulder pet that you have perched on your shoulder, which is definitely the most efficient method of boosting its charge light meter, as you can use this continuously at any point, draining 10% of the shoulder pet's charge. Another cool thing is that once it gains 50% of its charge bar, or is in range of the charge light of your shoulder pet when turned on, it will convert its primitive natural armor rating to an ascendant armor rating, transforming it into an extremely tanky beast. In terms of attacks, it has a regular double slash attack which deals some hefty damage, and a nice little hand grab ability where it can pick up small creatures. It can also attack after doing so, where it lifts up the creature out of harm's way and attacks with only the one hand, which is pretty cool. And my favorite feature, the ranged charge projectile, which deals a little bit of damage and will temporarily stun targets at the cost of a small chunk of charge light drainage. Speaking of draining its charge, yes, it can take flight, slowly but surely. You definitely won't be using it to get around quickly, that's for sure. Flying will drain its charge bar quite quickly, which does make sense as it would kind of ruin the Aberration experience if you could fly around willy-nilly. It does have a rest option via its radial menu, and it will quickly regain any lost stamina when in this state. I did also want to point out how cool the creature design is. I can safely say we've never seen anything like this in ARK before. I really love how its body gradually lights up with the more its charge bar fills up. It's so cool, and dare I say it, but it is a beautiful creature in many ways. The final thing I wanted to mention is that it does have an awesome looking roar, and this isn't just for cosmetic purposes. Whenever wild seekers are nearby, you can use this roar so that they become allies, kinda like the Uteranus Courage roar. The roar can be performed to keep refreshing the buff. It is a very cool creature that really does feel at home on Aberration. Up next, we have a very cool cat known as the Monari, which comes from Amalgam Maniac Gaming, from his Reclamation series from ASE, which are a collection of fantasy-themed creatures and are always a treat to use. It is clearly based on the Thylacoleo from its looks, animations, and behavior, as you will find them hanging out in the trees in the Redwoods forest, so I will assume that they share spawns with them too. So when looking for one, I'd highly recommend killing off the wild Phyllas to potentially allow for more to respawn, as they do seem to be quite rare. These things are, however, quite the grind to obtain. If we take a quick look at the new engrams that the mod adds, you will need to be level 95 to unlock all of these engrams, including the saddle, requiring no engram points to unlock, which is always nice. You won't be able to craft any of these new items until you gather a decent chunk of mana, while you will need to hunt down wild Minoris. They can either poop out 1 mana when roaming, which will take you 10 years to gather what you need, or they can be killed and appear to drop 4 mana at a time in their death cache. So either way, you'll be hunting them down for a while. It does have a spoil timer, but it can be stuck in the refrigerator to massively increase the spoil timer. Plus it does stack into a stack of 1000, so there's no worries about it going off quickly. The mana refinery is what you'll be wanted to craft first, which requires a good amount of resources and a whopping 100 mana to craft. This can be crafted inside your inventory and once placed down acts as a mini tech replicator, which is interesting as it is actually way cheaper to build than the tech replicator. Plus you do have to appreciate how cool it looks too. How awesome does that look? Anyway, once placed down, it does require mana to power, and here is where you will find all the items to craft from the mod. You'll then be needing to craft the mana repellent, which you'll need to tame one of these beasts, which does require 4 element, 2 stimulant, and 10 mana to craft one, and will last around 10 minutes. So depending on your taming rates, you may need more or maybe not. This can also be placed inside a refrigerator to increase the spoil timer, and yes, we do need repellent because it is a passive tame. This stuff will make you almost invisible to the Manori. Once spraying yourself down with your new fragrance from Lynx, you are ready to approach the wild one that you want to tame. With mana equipped in your final hotbar slot, who would have known it prefers to eat what comes out of its bum? Approach it from behind and shove that mana straight up its bum, right back into circulation. And it's as simple as that. Rinse and repeat until it is tamed. You can always just tame a low level one first, as once you have one, mana production will be much easier and more efficient, as the Manori will automatically convert any meat inside its inventory to mana, so you will always have a steady supply of it from just having one. Of course it is saddled up at level 95 and requires some basic resources and mana to craft. Once saddled up, you will have yourself a formidable battle mount. It pretty much works the same as the Phylocolio, exactly the same animations, just with some new and cool abilities. Whenever it bites a target, it will engulf it in flames, burning it for a duration of 30 seconds, so the attack can drain a target's health very quickly. Its strongest perk is most likely its healing capabilities. Whenever it chows down on a carcass, the Manori will set itself alight, which will rapidly heal it in just a matter of seconds. And as expected, its traveling capabilities are exceptional, able to jump twice as high and far as the Phyla, and also able to do everything it can but better. So if you are a fan of the Phylocolio, this could be the mod for you. Up next we have Clay's Patchy Rhino Edit, which will basically add a new model of the Patchy Rhino to your game and does everything a vanilla Patchy Rhino can do, but better. As of now, I do believe you can find them spawning on the island, Scorched Earth, and also the new Extinction map. I really love the model for this one as opposed to the vanilla Patchy Rhino. It is tamed the exact same way as the vanilla version by typical knockout methods and preferring bug repellent as food. Tasty. And just like the vanilla version, it can be saddled up at level 27. It has a potent melee attack that deals torpor with every hit, which is cool. However, it does typically deal more damage than it does torpor, so it can knock out some creatures without any kind of tactics, but with the majority of creatures it will just end up killing them instead. So for this Rex to be KO'd, I had to have it heal itself up with a carcass a few times. It also does have a mini charge attack which can be charged up, which doesn't deal a lot of damage but can temporarily stun targets, which can also be refreshed almost continuously. And of course, just like the vanilla version, it has a rage mode which works like the rare flower, where most creatures will attack it regardless of temperament, and also its calm mode, where anything below the size of an Allosaurus will not attack it for the duration. If you're a fan of the Patchy Rhino, then you'll definitely be a big fan of this version. Well, we go from peaceful herbivore to highly aggressive unit with this entry. This is the Desolar Titan from Dragonheart 7998. It is some sort of mutated Tyrannosaurus and is said to have strength equal to and even surpassing the likes of the Giga and the Karka. It will spawn and is planned to spawn on all maps where the Giga will spawn and does share spawns with the Giga and Karka, also having a variety of variants for it, as of now having a Scorched Earth variant spawning on maps that include a Scorched Earth biome. So for example, when playing Scorched Earth, they will spawn in the desert. The final variant is the Arcology, that will have a 50% chance to spawn over the vanilla variant. As always, the Arcology variant is beautiful. Moving on to taming, you will need to deal a good amount of damage to it, which can be dealt with tamed creatures or high damaging weapons. Once enough damage has been dealt, it will go into a berserk mode for about 30 seconds, and once it's done using all of its energy, it will then go into a resting stance. At this point, you need to quickly drop down, approach its mouth and feed it extraordinary kibble for your final hotbar slot. It is definitely a little fiddly, as it can be a challenge to even find a feeding prompt, and I did have a lot of trouble at first attempting to feed it. I was spamming the feed button like there's no tomorrow, which never seemed to work very well at all, and after many failed attempts and a few deaths, I came to realize that you just have to be a little patient with it. So what I'll do is hover above it when it is enraged and out of its bite range, of course, then drop down as soon as you see the animation of it going into its resting stance. Then look around your screen slowly when near its mouth for the prompt to pop up, and nowadays I almost never miss a feed when being patient. efficient. Once fed, it will heal to full, and if you do miss a feed, you will sadly have to bait it to wild creatures for it to go ham so it can heal up. I do find it easiest to use the tech suit for this rather than any tamed creatures, as you can drop down quicker to its mouth and just hover above it. You just have to rinse and repeat this process until it is tamed. I know it's easier said than done, but I managed to get there in the end. Once tamed, it can be saddled up at a whopping level 105, and if you do want to find better saddles, be sure to check red supply beacons. It has a number of strong attacks at its disposal: a strong bite attack that rivals the Giga's bite, a romper stomper stomp attack which deals much more damage than the regular bite, and also a tailspin attack, which I believe deals a little more damage than the regular bite. Similar to the Giga, the Desolate Titan will enter a rage mode. However, it will not turn on its owner and will not dismount the rider. Upon receiving too much damage and going into rage mode, it will receive 25% increase to its damage output and damage resistance, as well as a 50% increase to movement speed for 30 seconds, making it a force to be reckoned with, able to output a serious amount of damage. There is a small downside to going into rage mode, as it will enter its exhausted state shortly after going cray cray, where it will then take 75% extra damage from anything and everything, but it does only last for a small period of time, so it's probably more beneficial than not, and of course it will not be able to attack in this state. Another super awesome feature that the mod adds is an alpha boss variant of the Desolate Titan. You can craft the charm from your inventory once obtaining all the required tributes, and can then use it whenever you want to summon the boss straight onto the map at your location, so be sure to be ready, as this boss is an absolute monster with 1.5 million health and will hit like a truck, so you will definitely need a strong army to take it down. As you can see here from this clip, Rast does prevail in taking it down with a good amount of solo on solo action. I mean, he did lose his entire army, so it goes to show how strong this boss really is, but he still prevailed, and that's all that matters. Once slain, you will be rewarded with a ton of tasty loot, including the most ascendant loot you've ever seen, a whopping 1000 element, and the coolest thing of all, an ascendant bone armor saddle for your Desolate Titan, which is probably one of the coolest looking saddles I have ever seen, and I really do wish there was more saddle skins like this for a bunch of vanilla creatures in the game. I think that would be really cool. I highly recommend checking out this mod if you are looking for a new king of the ARK, as the Desolate Titan is a strong contender to take the title. Moving back to some herbivore power, we have the brand new Muttaburrasaurus from Nick BS2. I'm always a big fan of modded herbivores, mainly because I don't think we see enough of them, and the Muttaburrasaurus will always be a welcomed addition to any playthrough. They will typically spawn in jungles and plains, the green desert, oasis and canyons on Scorched Earth, and the sanctuary and desert dome on Extinction. To tame one of these fluffy fellas, you will first need to be level 55, and you will need to isolate the one you want to tame from its herd. You may want to trap them, as they can panic after being fed, mimicking other dinosaur species sounds, and can affect your character with the rare flower debuff, where everything in the area will begin attacking you, which is less than ideal. Once in a safe spot, the taming process is very simple, preferring superior kibble from your final hotbar slot. For the easiest taming method, you can actually ride a tamed Muttaburra and use their camouflage ability next to one that you want to tame, and it will not react after being fed. Once tamed, it can be saddled up at level 55. It has 2 directional attacks. When facing forward, will perform a headbutt attack, which can harvest meat etc. from carcasses, and when looking behind, will perform a tail bash attack that can harvest berries, both dealing average damage at best, but do deal some decent knockback. It's definitely no fighter by any means, but it does excel as a support creature, able to mimic other creature roars and calls from varieties of different species. When pressing the crouch key, you can toggle through the 6 different aspects that it can mimic, so let's go over these really quickly. The first buff is the aspect of Self, which will grant the Muttaburrasaurus a small health regen buff, and once using the roar, grants it the Muttaburra camouflage, which is the same as the Patchy Rhino buff from earlier in the video. We have test subject Rex here, just so we know what each does for your allied and tamed creatures. Aspect of the Raptor will give us a 10% land speed bonus, and once using the roar will give all allies 20% land speed, 10% less stamina drain, and 2.5 stamina regen. Aspect of the Baryonyx grants us 10% increased swim speed and 20% less oxygen drain, and once using the roar, buffs allies with 20% increased swim speed, 40% less oxygen drain, and 2.5 stamina regen. Aspect of the Stegosaurus, no surprises here, will make us a little more tankier by 5%, and when using the roar, will give allies 10% damage resistance and 2.5 health regeneration. Aspect of the Mammoth gives us weight reduction of 10% for any item inside the Muttaburra, and when using the roar, will give a similar debuff as the intimidation debuff of the Mammoth, decreasing any nearby creature's attack damage by 10% 5% and is also said to stack with the Mammoth debuff. The final buff is the aspect of the Tyrannosaurus, which will buff our damage by 5%, and once using the Roar, will buff all nearby allies' damage by 10% and health regeneration by 2.5. If you keep toggling through the stances and using the buff in Roars, all of these can stack. As you can see, our Rex is looking beefy, or at least from the perspective of our buffs tab. As you can see, all those buffs are running and can be constantly refreshed by the Mutaburosaurus. Plus, all our creatures will be looking rather pretty and colourful when fully buffed up, which is very nice. Finally, they do have a pack bonus that does seem to go up to a whopping +10. I'm not too sure how useful this will be, but who knows, maybe you plan on breeding a boss army of them. I stuck 10 of them up against 2 Alpha Rexes, and they were able to take them down with primitive saddles at least, so maybe they are somewhat useful in terms of combat. The Mutaburosaurus is a very cool creature, and I can definitely see them being used in boss fights. It definitely doesn't replace the UT, but if you do have an extra person to ride one of these boys, I can see a match made in heaven. And that is going to be the end of the video. Hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more, and do chuck down a comment. Let me know if there's any mods or modded creatures that you want me to showcase, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care. Goodbye.